Welcome back to this.
Get out of here. Welcome back to this week's midweek mini episode of the Well House Exorcism. This is your ghost of a host with the most, Shanna.
It's Puckwa PJ.
Before we begin, I have a joke for you, Puckwa PJ.
Oh boy.
Where do baby ghosts go during the day?
Where?
Day scare. There you go.
How do you make holy water? You boil the hell out of it.
We don't swear on my podcast.
Is it a swear?
Yes, it is.
Is it?
Yes. Anyway, this week is episode 10 of our midweek mini episodes, and for it, I would like us to travel all the way up to Alaska. We haven't been there, I think, ever in all of our 80 past episodes. So let's learn about something well-known and creepy. My references for this evening are Cryptid Wiki, Missing in Alaska TV show, Quest TV, Only in Your State, and, of course, Wikipedia.
And mine is outdoorlife.com.
Because you actually opened up my script?
I'm prepared, PJ, this week.
Oh my gosh! Well, color me surprised.
No, we're in the north. We don't talk like that.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, hot diggity dog.
That might be closer.
So we're in rural PA, so that works.
Well, I was talking about Alaska.
Oh, right.
Up in Alaska.
I don't know what they would say.
Yeah.
For this episode, I would like to begin by having you close your eyes and imagine the following, Puckwa PJ.
Okay.
You're walking through the woods. It is springtime and quite lovely. The sun is glinting through the leaves above, and the area around you carries that lovely pine scent you can only get deep in the woods.
Or from Lysol.
Up ahead, you hear the burble of a creek. However, something weird happens. As you are walking toward the water, you see your best friend, off to your right, calling to you to come over. How could this be? You know your friend is not in the woods or even anywhere close to this area. Or are they? So, do you go to your friend, or do you turn away and run?
Well, I mean, if it was my friend, he'd be saying, "Oi, stupid!" So, immediately, I would be a little concerned if he was calling me over.
Not saying, "Oi, stupid"?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, boy.
But, I don't know, I'd probably yell out, "What are you doing here?" And, knowing me, I'd probably go that way.
Me too. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If Carrie or Penny just showed up in the woods, I'd be like, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be surprised if Nurse Jackie...
That's my favorite tree! What are you doing there?
If Nurse Jackie just shows up in the Pennsylvania woods, I'd be like, "All right, cool, how's it going?" Like, welcome to Pennsylvania. This is where I live now. All right, well, we're in Alaska. So Alaska is home to many different species of animals, and over 1,100 are vertebrate species. It is a natural wonder of the world with beaches, deep, dense woods, tundra, and even coastal rainforests. However, there is a deeper, darker aspect to Alaska, and it is the fact that, possibly, 60,000 people have gone missing there. Added to this is the fact that there is the dreaded Alaska Triangle. Every year, 5 out of every 1,000 people goes missing in Alaska. While that number doesn't seem as high as numbers in Oklahoma, for example, it is still shockingly high considering how sparsely populated the area is. Numerically, the average number of people disappearing is 2,250 people, and this is twice the national average. Much of this can be blamed on the fact that the land is extremely rugged, lonely, and quite unsafe. Added to this is the large amount of grizzly bears, wolves, and moose, because moose tend to kill more people than grizzly bears in Alaska. You could also blame these missing persons on magnetic activity or even aliens if you so believe those stories, because there are a lot.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is one other monster that could be to blame, and that is the Kushtaka.
So not Kushtaka.
So, no. And that's funny, yeah. So I did a lot of research. We down here in our southern area, we call it the Kushtaka, and that's actually pronounced wrong. It's Kushtaka.
Okay.
And so we spell it Kushtaka, but that's not how the native Alaskans spell it.
Yeah, I found that.
Yeah, it's Kushtaka. So
Yep.
fun fact, if you say Kushtaka, that's fine, but it's Kushtaka.
Interesting.
Yep. So the coastal...
So it's like calling Amish Amish, like
Yeah.
they'll accept it, but they don't like it.
Pretty much, yeah. And if they didn't pronounce it correctly, I tended to turn those videos off. I was like, well, you didn't do your research. Kushtaka. So the coastal Tlingit people live in Alaska and Canada and have a known history of at least 10,000 years. So they is old.
Wow.
They is original.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So these folks have been around, and they know a thing or two about the animal life in this territory. Because of their long history, I personally feel that there may be something to this, even if the general idea of a Kushtaka sounds silly. Because Kushtaka, loosely translated, means land otter man. Yes, land otter man. I love otters. They're so stinking cute.
What about Mothman?
I don't see a Kushtaka, Mothtaka. That's not a thing. Sorry.
Mothaka.
No Mothaka for you. But otters are cute and cuddly.
Until they're not. Then they're scary.
Yes, obviously, yep.
Like the pack of otters that attacked that runner a few years ago.
Okay, yeah, that's true, yeah. Well, apparently,
So can I...
you can tell the
Real
story.
quick,
Go ahead.
because it's a runner accidentally stepped on an otter, and then a whole gang of otters. She estimated
We attack at dawn.
like close to 20 of them. She said swarmed her.
Good.
And she said she thought she was gonna die. Is this?
It's just like when you
Can
see
you just imagine a pack of otters running down the
it's just
street?
like a pack of crows. Crows have a memory, as do ravens. You make one of them angry, they're all going to hurt you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You got to watch out.
And they're carnivores. I mean, it makes sense.
You're not
They're gonna
selfish,
come at you.
but we're having human tonight. Meat's back on the menu, boys. Well, apparently, you got to be careful with these playful little fluffy butts. Okay? The Tlingit people believe that some otters are actually shapeshifters that look like men. And, a fun fact, Kushtaka can be 8 feet tall.
Okay.
So don't imagine a cute little fluffy otter. It's also said that the Kushtaka emit a high-pitched 3-part whistle in the pattern of low, high, low. But these creatures have an evil purpose, according to the Tlingit people. Their goal is to trap their victims' souls and prevent them from reincarnating. According to legend, Kushtaka can go invisible, they can read your mind, and they can see your deepest, darkest fears. Because of this, they will shapeshift into whatever truly is meant to scare you. So if you're afraid of clowns, they're going to be a clown. So they're not going to be just an otter man.
Wow.
Yeah. There's one story from Quest TV that I'm going to talk about later, and it's a woman who was attacked by a swarm of blackbirds, actually, because that's one of her deepest, darkest fears, and she has the scars to prove it.
Not a Hitchcock fan, is she?
That, exactly. Yeah. She talks about a
really?
certain movie of blackbirds that her brothers made her watch. Yeah. And the reason I also kind of believe there could be something to the Kushtaka is the Kushtaka story is actually similar, and I'm going to apologize in advance to pronunciation here because I do not know Native Alaskan pronunciations like I do Native Americans down in our area. But the Kushtaka story and legend is similar to the Watsa of the Tsimshian people, the Natia of the Dena'ina Native Alaskans of South Central Alaska, and the Urayuli of the Yupnik in Western Alaska. So many different groups of Native Alaskans all have stories of this creature.
Yeah.
They call it different things, but it does the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of to me lends a little bit more credence. If it was just one thing talking about it, okay, like Mothman, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, he's worldwide?
Jersey Devil, nah. All
Yeah,
right.
that one's that one's a little harder to believe.
So what is the general story? Now, do you know what the Kushtaka is? I know you did some research, but...
Yes, to a degree. I have here an excerpt from The Strangest Story Ever Told.
Oh, okay.
As well.
Is that a real story or not?
Yes.
Okay.
It is from prospector and fisherman Harry Culp.
Okay, so not the prospector I'm going to talk about later. Okay.
Yeah.
And what does he talk about?
Okay. So, the story begins, and this is from OutdoorLife.com. So, he was fisherman and prospector.
What?
And, yeah, right. And when he died, his widow found a manuscript titled The Strangest Story Ever Told. and her daughter, Culp's daughter, published it. And so the story begins in 1900 when Culp, then 19 years old, was living in a shack with 3 other prospectors in the village of Wrangell. All 3 were broke. One prospector, called Charlie in the story, he didn't want to be named, was given a tip by an old Tlingit man that there was a motherlode of gold in Thomas Bay, but the elder warned him not to go looking for it. So eventually, like, he goes, looks, and after like 2 weeks, I think it is, he comes back, looks horrible, like, and all he has is one thing of quartz with some gold flecks in it.
Okay.
And he says that there were these devils there, and to not go to Thomas Bay. And sure enough, they're like, well, we're going to go to Thomas Bay then.
That's exactly where we're going to head off, yeah.
And so they go, and Charlie had boarded the first steamboat back to Seattle. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm out. I'm not staying in Alaska anymore.
Yeah.
So Harry Culp says, quote, swarming up the ridge toward me from the lake were the most horrible creatures. I couldn't call them anything but devils, as they were neither men nor monkeys, yet looked like both. They were entirely sexless, their bodies covered with long, coarse hair, except where scabs and running sores had replaced it. Each one seemed to be reaching out for me, and was striving to be the first one to get me. The air was full of cries, and the stench from their sores and bodies made me faint. I forgot my broken gun and tried to use it on the first ones, and then I threw it at them and turned and ran. God, how did I run? I could feel their hot breath on my back. Their long claw-like fingers scraped my back. The smell from their steaming, stinking bodies was making me sick, while the noises they made, yelling, screaming, and breathing, drove me mad. Reason left me. How I reached the canoe, or hung on to that piece of quartz, is a mystery to me. Oh, I'm sorry. So that was from Charlie.
So you actually are telling the story then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know who the Culp person is, but the Charlie person, I do know. That's actually going to be part of my story. But
yeah, so Charlie told it to Harry, and Harry wrote it down.
Yeah, okay, yep.
But then this guy, who's writing about the Kushtaka...
So you're telling a story that I'm going to be telling later.
Okay. So I'll leave that for you then.
Yeah. What happens to Henry Culp then?
So not Henry Culp, there's this guy who wrote the article for Outdoor Life.
Oh, okay.
He is investigating the Kushtaka, asking natives about it, and a lot of them laugh in his face, to the point where he says he starts cold calling people, like, hey, do you know anything about the Kushtaka? And then they like laugh and hang up on him, so he'd call the next number. But some people said, like, you are walking down a dark path, like, you need to stop this right now. Mm-hmm. And so he said he was camping with his girlfriend MC and their dog one night, and he gets woken up in the middle of the night, and MC is like, there's something out there. And she has like a can of bear spray ready.
Good for her.
and he's like, oh, okay. So he like gets out, turns on his flashlight, starts walking around. He does like a circle around the tent. Nothing. But then he hears like rocks tumbling in the distance in the woods. And he's like, there aren't any rocks here. Like, it's flat land. Yeah. Why are there rocks? And he's like, okay, whatever. So he goes back into bed. He's like, there's nothing. And then he falls asleep again. And when he comes back, he comes to again. She's like, there's something out there. And so he goes back and, looks around again, nothing. So then he gets back in and she's already asleep. And he's like, what? So, then the third time, she doesn't wake him up. He wakes up on his own because something is pushing against the tent on his feet. Mm-mm. And so he like kicks at it, and it pushes back harder.
Yeah.
Like, it's leaning on the edge of the tent.
Yeah.
And so he kicks real hard, and then he hears the sound of something running away on 2 feet. Yeah.
So
and the whole time the dog is like growling away. Like,
well, it's interesting that because he has a dog. So like,
yeah.
Okay. So the general story, in case you guys out there do not know what a Kushtaka is, in many of the stories, the Kushtaka steal people, it's what the legends say. Mm-hmm. They steal people by distracting them with illusions of their family, their friends, something. By getting these people off of the path, they lure them away. Once the person is truly alone and lost, the Kushtaka then transforms the person into a fellow Kushtaka.
Oh.
Yep. Legends also hold that the Kushtaka imitate the cries of babies or the screams of women to lure victims to the river. Once there, the Kushtaka will either rip them up and eat them, or change them over to Kushtaka.
This sounds like fairies or Pukwudgie.
Yep. Either way, the soul of the person is then taken, and so they can't be reincarnated.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, that is what's really scary then for the native people of Alaska, is the idea of not being able to reincarnate.
That's always the scary thing for me about like possessions and things like that, is what happens when the people who die from possessions die, you know, like what happens to them, you know?
Go. Yeah. Well, they say that groups of Kushtaka are especially dangerous. And so there are stories of these hybrid groups kind of like working together, and they will hunt and they will kill. So this is another reason why it's important to use a buddy system if you're going to go like walking in the woods in Alaska. If you travel with someone else, you're less apt to be drawn away because your deepest, darkest fear isn't going to be their deepest, darkest fear kind of situation. So you'll be less apt to believe that a shapeshifter is like one of your family friends.
It's a John dies at the end situation right there.
Yeah,
they're both
much.
Looking at a girl, and the girl looks different to each of them.
Exactly. Yeah. So then I had
shout out to anyone who knows that reference, by the way.
I really enjoyed watching a couple different shows and like little episodes about the Kushtaka. So in the show Missing in Alaska, there's this first-hand account of a person named Alex. And his story is like pretty cool. He said he was going out for a run on Indian River Trail, and he happened to see his friend up ahead. And he was surprised because he was running alone and his friend didn't say he was going running, but he's like, okay, cool, we can run together, you know?
Yeah.
So he hollers up to his friend.
Don't step on the otter. they'll get you.
But his friend didn't
That's
answer.
an otter story.
That's an otter story.
It's a whole otter story.
That goes to Games Overboard. It's not the joke for here, but good try. Anyway. So,
that's for an otter podcast.
There you go. So his friend didn't answer. And so at that point, Alex was like, I wasn't going to chase him because his friend like heads off into the woods.
He's going in otter direction.
So Alex stops, like I said. At that moment, he sees his friend then bolt completely into the woods. So Alex, being, you know, smart and a native Alaskan, he was raised on stories of the Kushtaka and he believes them. So he was smart. He's like, I'm going to grab my phone out of my pocket and I'm going to call my friend. That way I can like see where he is. And like if he wants to meet me somewhere up the trail.
Collaborate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Smart.
So he calls and his friend answers right away. And he said, I'm not out on the trail. I'm in my house. And added to this, like his friend was not winded at all. So obviously he was not running.
He's just really in shape.
And so Alex realized that something was out there and it was trying to lure him into the woods. So he turned around and went right back home. So he was really smart about it.
Yeah.
Now, in another story on the same episode, Brad Benson is talking about what he was doing. And he said in 2011, he and his friend were doing some volunteer work. They were just kind of cleaning up the side of a road, like almost like community service that you would be doing, but he was just doing it volunteer work. While he was working, his friend and he both had their headphones on and they split up a little bit. So he's kind of up ahead and he is getting some trash off the ground. And then his friend shows up kind of inside the trees above him, alongside the road. And he tells Brad, there's a big pile of trash back here. Come on, let's go back here and get it all together. And so Brad's going to grab an extra bag, to go back. But as he was going to head in, a lady jogger came around the turn on the right-hand side with her dog. And her dog starts barking like crazy. So when he looks back at the woods, because, of course, he was walking in, he turned to look at the lady jogger and the dog. He turns back to the woods. He said all he saw was this like dark brown creature with no tail running back into the woods. Which he knew is like, okay, that's not my friend. But added to this, his friend then appeared beside the lady jogger from the woods. And Brad's just like, did you just tell me to get the trash in the woods? And he realized there's no way that his friend could have been in two places at once. Yeah. So he was just like, all right, yep, Kushtaka's real.
That's creepy.
Yeah. But finally, the story of the birds. Okay, this does not come from the Missing in Alaska. This is on Quest TV. So if you are interested, listeners, in watching a very, very short YouTube video, just type in Quest TV plus Kushtaka, and it'll pop up. It's like 3.5 minutes long. A lady named Diana Lynn Tucker tells her story on there about the Kushtaka when she was on a trip to Alaska. Now, see, she's not from the area. She and her husband are from Texas, and they saved up to go on a trip.
Okay.
So she's there for like an entire summer. Her friends come up. So her friend Cherie and her were going on a hike. It's July, beautiful outside. So she heads off to pick some flowers in the wood. And all of a sudden she realizes that number one, she's all alone. And number two, there's no sound at all in the woods. Like,
oh man, that's
yeah, not even bird song. So she kind of just like stops and just looks, and she's freaking out.
Yeah, city people, like, woods are noisy. You know,
Mhm.
other than the sound of leaves rustling in the wind,
Yeah.
like, there's always noise in the woods.
There's always birds making their cacophony, as I like to say.
Yeah, or woodpeckers, you know, rattling away.
And there's probably a deer somewhere scratching his antlers, but you have like sticks falling, you know, you have the foliage sounds. Of course, there's the wind blowing constantly. Even if it's not a windy day, you're going to have the wind, like the leaves rustling. It's very nice. So yeah, she stops because none of that's happening. It is dead quiet. As soon as she notices that and kind of like stands still, a huge flock of ravens begin attacking her. And I mean like a flock. They start like spiraling around her like in a tornado. Her deepest, darkest fear is flocks of black birds because of a famously creepy movie about birds attacking.
Kiki's Delivery Service.
There it is, yeah. Her brothers made her watch it when she was younger, and it's been her like deepest, darkest fear since. So she's being attacked, and now she is covered in blood across her arms because they are just pecking at her and grabbing at her. Cherie happens to find her because she hears her screaming. She finds her covered in blood and asks, "Did you fall, Diana?" Diana's like, "No, I was attacked by birds."
Didn't you see them?
Yeah, and Cherie was like, "What are you talking about? There are no birds. I didn't hear any birds." So they weren't even there.
Yeah.
According to Cherie.
That's like some Pennywise stuff, right?
Right? Yeah. So her friend was very much confused. They decided that they were just
I'll
going
worry about you, Bevy. I worry a lot.
So they decide to leave. And later, Diana found herself face to face with the tribal leader. She was kind of like walking along, and then boom, the person was there. And she said it was really creepy because the tribal elder walked up to her and like looked at Diana almost like she was a demon.
Are you one of them?
But she said, "Were you attacked by a Kushtaka?" And Diana's just like, What? Like, she said she was surprised, but she said she felt validated because the tribal leader, she didn't even tell the story. Like, the tribal leader just knew that she had been close to this evil.
Yeah.
And the tribal elder had told her, basically, you're lucky to have escaped with your life, and that means you must have a higher purpose. But the tribal leader said, like, you are lucky because that doesn't happen, like, often. However, she has scars across her forearms forever because of it.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, it's only 3.5 minutes, but I would suggest if you're interested to watch it because it's just kind of cool. Now they reenact it, you know. So
yeah.
But anyway, the very cuteness of otters is what makes the Kushtaka so dangerous, according to the Tlingit people. Because we're so drawn to their playful nature, it's easy to miss the fact that these shapeshifters really want to consume our souls and condemn us to spend eternity wandering the frozen tundra.
Just like real otters sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, and since the Kushtaka mainly preys upon small children, it has been thought by some that this story was used by the Tlingit people, especially the mothers, to keep their children from wandering too far or into the ocean by themselves.
Also like fairies and Pukwudgie.
Yeah.
A lot of similarities to the East Coast here.
And what's interesting is when we watched, we were watching True Detective, and there's something calling her out into the ocean, right? You know, so kind of made me think of that, like that kind of similarity. So some famous stories are that you kind of mentioned are of a village that was completely annihilated near St. Thomas Bay. There is also the story of a prospector searching for gold and a writer who wanted to learn more about that. So the village. It was a village of 500 people near Thomas Bay. It was completely wiped out in 1750. The locals blame the Kushtaka, but I would fall on the side of science and say it was most likely the Baird Glacier because it breaks apart and falls sometimes. So why would you build your village so close to this glacier? You know, science. Yeah. But the locals said that the Kushtaka can climb up there and break the ice down and smash people. So, however, the prospector story, as you started reading, is very interesting. The year was 1900.
Yep.
His name was Charlie. He was sent ahead of his group to find this supposed vein of gold because they'd been told about it. So he heads off to this Thomas Bay area. And while he's there, he noted that there was this strange lack of wildlife. He's out in the woods and it is, again, dead silent. And that's in his journal. And then as soon as he realized that there was no sound and that it was mysteriously quiet, like not even the birds were singing, he heard and saw a large galloping creature, and it was running right toward him. It was big, It was furry, and he said it had super long claws. And so he turns and he runs back, but as he's running, he can feel it right behind him, like scratching at him and trying to grab him. When he told this tale to the people, all the locals said it was the Kushtaka, and he was lucky to have been gotten out alive. And so he never goes back there, as you kind of had mentioned. And so when this story and the village that disappeared became major news, a writer then decides, well, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to check it out. So he heads off to the village and to where the prospector was last seen on the trail. He gets there. He's writing in his journal, but then he disappears. Everyone found his journal in its campsite, but the writer was gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think that's also, that storyline is kind of told in the Missing in Alaska. They kind of tell that story. They don't go into Henry Culp or anything.
So Henry Culp, when he went back, he actually blacks out when they get there. Yeah, so he says, I remember seeing a deer walking through the mist, and then for some reason, I sat down at the base of a tree. Some time later, he woke up groggy. He was wandering deeper into the woods, clutching his rifle. His backpack, which contained all his hunting gear and survival, was gone. Other Southeast Alaskan hunters have similar stories, and then he goes on to talk about others. But he just woke up in the middle of the woods holding his rifle, but all of his supplies were just missing from his back.
Huh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, just to make us all feel a little more uncomfortable on this topic and to add some validity to this, because you might be thinking, listeners, this is adorable. This can't be real. I feel the same way about the Jersey Devil. But something happens on the TV show Missing in Alaska, and it's been mentioned many times in journals and whatnot. But they actually have biological evidence that is just phenomenal.
Okay.
So the main showrunners of the TV show, when they're out on the hunt for the Kushtaka, they find this kind of big burrow. And so they go in there they find piles of hair. So they grab some of the hair, they collect it, and they take it back to the lab to be tested. The lab tech confirmed that the DNA matches an otter 100%, but the hair is way too long. It's like if we had our dog Rosie.
Yeah, otters have extremely short hair.
Yeah. So he actually pulls a pelt out and says, this is what otter fur looks like. It needs to be short because they're in the water. You know, it's a double coat, whatever, but this is
it's hydrophobic
and
all that.
The hair strands are way too long for it to be an otter. And so the lab tech could not explain. He's like, I have no idea why you found this, how you found this. There must be some kind of genetically modified otter out there.
Mutant otter.
Yeah, pretty much was like what he went with.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Otters.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it because the lab tech is like, I don't like this.
I am too. I want to see these ninja otters.
But if you do, they eat your soul. So,
well, maybe they have a friendly rat guiding them.
Oh, okay. No, maybe you could try to lure them with pizza. But anyway, so very validating, also confusing.
That was really incredible, though.
Really cool, but really horrifying. Yeah. So that was just kind of cool. So with all this being known, the big question is, can we save ourselves from the Kushtaka? The short answer is yes.
Don't go to Alaska.
No,
oh.
You should go. According to the legends and the stories passed on by the tribal leaders, Kushtaka are afraid of iron, steel, and copper because they know that these metals can be turned into weapons. So they're afraid of that. In some stories, urine and even fire can ward off these monsters. But there is one tried and true safeguard that works all the time, and it is man's best friend. Yes, PJ, dogs save us again. The Kushtaka are apparently terrified of dogs. So this is why Brad Benson was able to be safe because the jogger came out with the dog, right?
Yeah.
So as long as we have Rosie and now our Ollie, we are safe. We're good.
Thank goodness.
Yes, so it's a good thing we got Ollie today. We got a dog today, listeners.
Alaskan listeners, I just want to say, though, we almost moved to Alaska a couple years ago. And I find it rather charming. And, I mean, it's understandable that every single house on Zillow, there is at least one picture of the heat source in the house. Here's our furnace. Here's what it looks like.
It really works. So, what are your thoughts, Puckwa PJ? Could the Kushtaka exist?
It's compelling for sure, especially with the hair that was found.
Yeah,
are they shapeshifters though, or are they just weird mutant otters that eat people?
Some people just call it Alaska's Bigfoot. Could it just be a Bigfoot?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, if it looks like your friend and then it's not, It's
Yeah.
not an otter anymore. You know what I mean? Like, that's
a whole otter thing.
a whole otter thing. That's right. So, in any case, thank you for listening to the Wellhouse Exorcism, listeners. Find us on Instagram as Wellhouse Exorcism, Twitter X, or Facebook under Games Overboard. Feel free to hop on our website as well, gamesoverboard.com. And please email us. We want to hear from you, especially with your deja vu and your stories. Steve messaged me and said that his reoccurring dream is about sharks. And I was like, nope. I hate sharks. They're so scary.
When I was a kid, mine was squirrels that would eat me.
What?
They growled, and then they jumped on me, and it hurt, and I woke up.
Okay. Well, anyway, so please email us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, anything. We'll talk to you. And tell us what your thoughts are, what you liked, what you don't like, so we can build this more around you guys. But as always,
Think spooky thoughts.